Hey, today we are going to be wrapping up Siman Reish Mem Tesiv Gimel, which we already had several sessions on. We're talking about eating over here before Shabbos, not eating too much, how much. We're going to run through the Piskei Teshuvos over here and see if he has any insights that will help us out. Let's go over here. Interesting idea. Certain rabbis had stringencies upon themselves. They wouldn't even eat from the beginning of the day on Shabbos. They would make sure to eat less than they would typically eat throughout the rest of the week. Tremendous stringency. In order that they would have room for their Shabbos Suda at night, for the Shabbos meal at night. Which rabbis were these? Chassam Sofer wouldn't eat bread the entire Friday on Erev Shabbos. Only in the morning he would have a baked item, and in the afternoon he would have a little soup. The Aruch HaShulchan says it's fitting for anyone who fears Hashem in the winter, where the days are very short, not to have a meal on Erev Shabbos, only to taste. In the Dinim Van Hagos, the Chazan Ish was stringent upon himself to eat the afternoon before halachic midday, before chatzos, even if he wasn't going to wash his hand. Look, this is obviously next level in terms of stringency, but what we do see from over here is you got the idea of coming into Shabbos with an appetite. Person has to know themselves, you know, metabolisms, whatever it is, how much they're eating, how big they are. You got to know. And based on that, you have to make a calculation in advance about what's going to happen. Certainly, after Chatzos, everyone should be careful from this halachic midday. Mikra Hadin from the letter of the law, there's no prohibition, even to wash and to eat bread. Nevertheless, Mikol Makom Lamisha Mizgo Bria Nachun Limona Shalechul Ki Yamini Mizoinus O Tavshal Pashan Amina Pedus. Someone who has a health situation in which if he's going to eat, it will fill him up. So it's correct that he should refrain from eating too much and should only have simple items and not too much. Less than he's used to during the week. In the beginning of the ninth halachic hour, some say you should refrain from bread, mezainis, more than the size of an egg, and drinking intoxicating beverages. Too much. Large quantity. More than the size of an egg also. So this is the idea. You have to be careful what you eat and how much of it you eat.
This is Shah Sears. That means the beginning of the ninth hour.
Yes.
Okay.
Now over here, he says it's obvious that you don't want to fill up your stomach with types of mezainis, because that's not going to help at all. Right. So that's an important point as well. That's what he says over here. In this section, he has an interesting point where he discusses, let's say you have Shabbos is on Erev Yantif. Rosh Chodesh is on Erev Shabbos. Hoshana Rabbah is on Erev Yantif, Shmini Atzeres. Yantif falls out Erev Shabbos. Rosh Chodesh falls out Erev Shabbos tomorrow. Rosh Chodesh Tammuz. So now you have an issue. On the one hand, you have an obligation to have a meal. On the other hand, you have Shabbos and Yantif approaching. Purim falls out on Erev Shabbos. All of these are specific scenarios in which we could run into potential halachic issues and that we have to be careful about. So this would be what we learned. A sudo, which its zman is on Erev Shabbos. It's a meal, and its time for the meal is specifically on Erev Shabbos. Lechatchila, preferably, you should try to do it before halachic midday, chatzos. Except for shalosh. The time lechatchila could even be done, should be done after chatzos. We learned till shalosh. Should have that after halachic midday. However, just do it before 9 halachic hours into the day. If you delayed and you didn't do it then, you could do it afterwards, but you should be careful not to eat or drink too much, because then you might not be able to eat later that night. Make sure that the Suda doesn't stretch all the way until sunset as well. Get into shilohs with Kiddush and everything like that. It's not really our topic over here, but this past Purim fell out on Erev Shabbos. And people were getting instructed all over the place, just have your Suda before, you know.
Start.
That's why, for me, I said, try to do it before Chatzos. Because that's l'chachil. That's what this sif is about. You should try to do it before Chatzos. That's what you should try to do.
To start it, right?
Yeah. But the problem is that people were starting at what time? 3 o'clock. I'm saying they were coming up with all times. Yeah, that's what most people were saying. Oh, just start it before this time. It works, but it's not preferable. And Simon Tafresh Sadeh, we'll learn it. Anyways, that's what this is saying over here. That's an important point. We really should have put this with yesterday's session, but we rushed towards the end anyways. We saw Ber Halacha, who was against making the Kiddush, eating a lot of mezainis in shul on Shabbos morning. If you're going to do that and have mezainis before your Suda, don't protest those who are lenient. Because they do it in order to have more brachos on Shabbos, to get to the 100 brachos. According to those who are lenient, you could even do the Shabbos night. Surprise, surprise. Technically, you could do a Shabbos night. It's the Darchei Moshe that we saw. But some say, Shabbos night, you should refrain from doing that. Because during the day, you're going to taste something. And if you're going to do that at night, even just a little bit, that could really cause your appetite to get ruined. Could even be an achilas kas issue. In the morning, when you didn't eat anything yet, if you're going to have a little bit of mezainis, you're going to have a little bit of food after the Kiddush, it's not going to completely ruin your appetite because you didn't eat anything the whole day. However, at night, that could completely ruin your appetite. Would be a difference between day and night. I think the Ishul Avram makes this distinction. That's why you never really see Kiddush at night being made in shul where people actually eat. Be'er Halacha says you should be careful not to have a lot, even during the morning as well, we learned. Worry about the Magen Avram and other poskim who say that you should refrain from this. So, the end of the day, to summarize everything that we learned, we want to have a conversation about it. We saw that there were different levels and different categories. There was a meal which isn't optional, which isn't mandatory or time sensitive, that it has to be Erev Shabbos. And it could have even been a mitzvah. For example, an Erusin, engagement. It didn't have to be then. The problem with that is that it was going to be a very, very lavish meal. So that we saw, that was already an issue. If you're going to have very, very, very large quantities. That was the first case in the Shulchan Aruch. The entire day would be a problem to have that. Actually, before the summary, just want to share one more thing. I had the Shiloh. The yurtzeit of my father, Lev Shalom, was this past Erev Shabbos. It's custom to fast on a yurtzeit unless you come out with the reason why not to fast. So, question is, are you allowed to fast Erev Shabbos? So this is going to be the next two sifrim that we're going to do. We're not going to spend so much time on it, but Harfness is a Jew over here. He says you're allowed to. Kofir Ches, just wanted to share that idea. Just to summarize where we're holding over here. So that type of meal would be a problem. Even the entire day. However, if you have a meal where the set time is on Erev Shabbos, it's permissible. Even if it's very, very lavish, much bigger than you have during the week. It's permissible. For example, bris pidyon haben. We did learn a lengthy ber halacha properly, with great detail, the best that we could. I thought we did a superb job. And remember what he said?
With the Biur
The
Halacha?
ber halacha about this nakuda?
About the lavish Suda?
Lavish bris before Shabbos.
Lavish bris before they said maybe do it before Chatzos.
He was talking about, we were learning about is it better to not do a smaller mitzvah now?
Oh,
He
that
said
is
it's okay. He said it's better to do a bris, right?
He said what?
Didn't he say it was better to have a lavish shooter?
that was the whole
He
Indian.
said that you could eat whatever you want at the bris, even though you're not gonna have an appetite for Shabbos. That's what the Ber Halacha said. He went back and forth, right?
Went back and forth.
Yeah.
Said
Right?
yes, right? The Lavush said yes,
Let's remind ourselves.
but they were going. He was going back and forth.
He quoted this Ber Halacha. It was a Moganer from and a Lavush. Very good. According to the Lavush, if you could have both with an appetite, that's great. We don't have a shaila on that. There's no question on that. If not, forget about the Shabbos Suda. But the Ber Halacha questioned that. Forget about the Shabbos Suda. What's the status of the meal at a bris in a pidyon haben? Is it a chiyuv?
That's just
Best, it's a minhag. It's minhag baal. So Shulchan Aruch, Reish Samachay, in your Yeridea,
the meal
in Shin Hey.
meal and Shabbos is asmach d'oraisa.
That's right. So therefore, who says that you should do that? Right? So the Ber Halacha didn't like that lavush at all, and it was very questionable.
We're going back and forth about the Radbaz. Was that?
That was the yeah, the Radbaz. Even the Radbaz would agree over here because you know for sure that the Shabbos is more important. That's what we saw in the footnote of the Hazar. Very good Chazar. And therefore, if you estimate that by you eating now a lot at the bris of the pidyon ben, let's say for example it's later in the day for some reason, you're gonna miss the suda, you should refrain from that, the Ber Halacha said. Don't eat too much at that bris. Or the pidyon ben. And then he said there's a difference between if you're gonna eat and just have less of an appetite versus if you're gonna eat at the bris and the pidyon ben and be totally stuffed. Because if you're totally stuffed by the time Shabbos comes in, it's not even cold eating. So therefore, this is the idea of the Ber Halacha. You've got to take it down a notch or two, current mitzvah that you're doing, before later on. Level 3, we saw just an optional meal. An optional meal in general, that's fine. Once it gets to 9 hours, you have to be careful though, not to do that. Mishnah Berurah, others points out, as long as you start, you can finish before 9 hours. He points out in the winter, don't even wait for 9 hours. Even before is going to be an issue. Even before 9 halachic hours, because it's less time. You have to know how much time it is. The Ber Halacha, the small one on the bottom, of the Kvaya Suda, said this is only talking about a meal that you're going to be satiated with if you're eating. If you're not going to be satiated, you could even wash. Even lechatchila, we saw in those Vahad, the Mishnah Berurah, even lechatchila. So that's basically a summary of what we're doing. And the basic idea is 2 reasons not to eat. Number 1, to go in with an appetite. That's the main reason. And number 2, remember the Pri Megadim that we saw in the Ber Halacha? It's a bizayon. It's a disgrace to Shabbos. You're equating before Shabbos like Shabbos. So that's basically a summary of this sif. Thought it was an important sif. Yeah? Okay. So we're going to start the next sif. Yeah, questions, comments on this?
Okay, so just going back on that Radbaz.
Yeah.
Another example, let's say you could daven, somebody wants to grab you for a minyan now, I don't know, let's say not in the basic Knesset, it's like 10, 11 people, or you can daven in shul, right, which is a mitzvah in itself, a basic Knesset, and you have a hidden mitzvah, let's say, Barov, not just there's more people there. Do you grab the mitzvah now, or you should delay it?
10 or 11 people in a house versus going
Let's say
to
in
a
a
shul
house or in a wedding.
versus going to a shul.
Versus going to a shul.
If you could go to a shul, then you should definitely go to the shul.
Definitely go to the shul.
Definitely go to shul. That's a Simon Sadi question. Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Shul is much more
And let's
important.
say that at a wedding where there may be more people, but you can still go to shul, catch some minyan in the shul.
It's a good question. I'm not 100% holding the Metzig right now, but I would assume davening in a shul is more important than davening with a lot of people, but not in a shul. I would assume.
Do it later.
That's a Simon Sadi question. It's a good question. Okay.